weekly Dartscast in the chat there, guys. If you love these sort of things, chatting darts, listening to, go check them out. If you haven't done so already, get on Twitter, get on social media, go check out the weekly Dartscast. Absolutely brilliant podcast, guys. They have different guests on all the time, and they're always finger on the pulse with that. They're always relevant guests, really good questions as well. Go check them out, guys. They are worth having a look at.
Hello and welcome to a new episode of the weekly Dartscast, sponsored by Dartwolf. I'm Alex Moss, and joining me as we begin the road to 400 episodes, it is Darts statistician Burton DeWitt. How are you doing?
I'm doing just fine, and beautiful weather here. What more can you ask for other than, talking about darts? How are you, Alex?
Glad to hear it. Yeah, I'm doing all right, thank you. Just wanted to say right off the top, thanks to everyone who took the time to message us last week after we did reach 300 episodes. We appreciate all the messages that we got, and we hope we can bring you more of this Dynamite Darts content that you've come to enjoy from us. But we are on episode 301. You teased it last week, Burton. You're playing 301, double in, double out. Some of our listeners might be familiar with that game in the leagues that they play in. But for you, what double are you starting on to get in?
Well, what double I'm starting on to get in is different than what double I'm getting in on, most likely. I'm definitely starting on double 16. I'm probably scraping a double 7 or a double 8 by accident, or more likely missing for 7 turns and then finally switching to double 11 and getting in. But no, my normal is I start double 16. If I block, I switch to 14s and 11s right on the left side of the board.
Yeah, I'm pretty similar as well. The double that I'm going for, it might not end up being that double, and I've always ventured towards double 12. I know a lot of people like tops or like yourself, they like double 16, doubles that you often end up going for traditionally to win the legs. But for me, double 12, and I do tend to shank it low into the double 9 or high into the double 5 sometimes. Let us know your double. Are you like me? Do you go for double 12, or are you like Burton and you go for double 16 or something else? And lots to bring you on the show this week. Unfortunately, we've not got any guests calling in from Torremolinos this week, but we do have 2 guests that are calling in from the Netherlands and the US. We've got Jeffrey de Zwaan, the former major semi-finalist, 2-time Players' Championship winner. He's back on the show, and back with us, we've also got the CEO of the CDC, Peter Citera. Those 2 chats coming up a little bit later on. But let's start with a look back at the weekend. We had another double-header of Players' Championships in Wigan, and starting off with the winner on Saturday, Krzysztof Ratajski, back in the winner's circle. He won Players' Championship 9 for the Polish Eagle. Can this be a springboard for him to push back into the world's top 16 this year?
I definitely think it's possible. He needs to bring this onto the big stage. And we haven't seen him on the big stage nearly as much as we had it's hard to say in previous years because due to COVID, we didn't have that many Euro Tours for a couple of years. But for about 4 or 5 years now, he's been a seed, and he's been at all the Euro Tours. And this year, he finally dropped out, just barely. He has been the top seed or the second seed to the Euro Tour qualifiers. But he's had to go to them. And for the first 4 Euro Tours this year, he's only made it through to 1. And when we saw him, he played pretty well, forcing Gerwyn Price to a last leg decider, which, I mean, if you're even hanging with Gerwyn Price right now, you've had to play well. But he didn't look that good in the first round against Bradley Brooks. When we saw him at the Masters against Dirk van Dijvenbode, he didn't look that good. He did look okay in the UK Open, but also lost to Dirk van Dijvenbode. We haven't really seen him on the stage, and when we have, he hasn't been getting results even when he has been performing. And if he's going to move back in the top 16, he's going to need to win on the stage. He's going to need to get to the Euro Tours, and he's going to need to win matches at the Euro Tours. And so far this year, he hasn't been getting there, and he hasn't been performing on the big stage. That said, he's looked really good in the Players' Championships. Okay, obviously you have to be good to win one, but he won one right after making a final. And so far this year, across the 10 Players' Championship events, he's 9th in averages. That's top 10 caliber. And it's not just, one event. It is now over a space of a third of a season. That is meaningful. That shows that he is playing pretty darn well. En route to the title, he beat 3 of the 8 players who are ahead of him in the averages. Obviously, Johnny Clayton is tops, but he also beat 2 of the other people who are ahead of him in the averages. So it's not like he was given this easy draw. he's playing really well in the Players' Championship events, and that's where he historically made his name. But he needs to step up his game on the big stage. By winning this event, by making another final, he's no longer a worry that he's going to miss out on the World Match Play or miss out on the World Grand Prix. And if he was missing out on those events, his ranking would keep dropping because he played in all those last year and the year before and the year before that, which means the 2 years ago ones are going to be dropping off. And by winning a Players' Championship event, he's at least moved into that standby position to get back into the Grand Slam. Making sure he gets to the television events is the first step. Getting back into the Euro Tour events is right alongside that. And if he does that, then he'll give himself the opportunities. And if he's giving himself the opportunities, at some point, that floor performance level that he's at will show on the stage. Everyone knows he's good enough. He got to the top 16, even without a real big television run, because of how consistent he was for so long in the Players' Championship events and in the Euro Tour events. And it's okay, it's not. We haven't seen a full season yet, but we've seen a third of a season where he's getting back toward that level. He's getting back toward that consistency, at least on the floor. That's giving himself that possibility and that potential to be where in the events that he needs to be to get back in the world's top 16. So can it be a springboard? Absolutely. And that's what the question is. It wasn't will it, it was can it. So yes, it can be. But he's going to have to make sure that when we see him on the big stage, he starts playing like he's been doing in these floor events, because that's where the big money is. That's where the opportunity to climb is, not just because of the big money, but also because he hasn't had that run to a final yet at least in a televised event. So if he could do that, that's just going to be building on what was a year that many thought was just, can he avoid the fall?
Yeah, I think you're right there. And I'll come on to talk about bigger occasions that might be coming up from soon, but just on the title at the weekend. And I think if you asked any player, they'd say there's never a bad time to win a Players' Championship title, but there can be better times to win one. And you look at a player like Krzysztof Ratajski, as you say, he just made that final a month ago, but getting back in that winner's circle, it is going to give him confidence. And he is someone that not so long ago, you go back 4 or 5 years, he was someone that was picking up these floor titles in the PDC very regularly. You go back to 2018 when he didn't have a tour card, he won 3 floor titles, and then you go to 2019, and I think he made something like 5 finals. He won 2 of them, and he also had that Euro Tour title in Gibraltar as well. So he's someone that we have seen make those steps forward. And the next question has always been for Krzysztof Ratajski it was always thrown at him well, we've seen him do it on the floor. We've now seen him do it on the Euro Tour. He's got the quality, but can he do it on the big stage? And what does he go and do? 2020 gets to the quarterfinals of the World Match Play, and it was towards the end of that year, going into 2021, where we saw him have so many deep runs. That World Championship that was behind closed doors at Ali Pali, getting to the quarterfinals, another quarterfinal at the UK Open, the World Grand Prix, semi-finals of the World Match Play, and okay, it wasn't a ranking event, but got to the semi-finals of the World Series finals as well. So a lot of big runs there, and probably after that, it's been a little bit surprising that he's not gone deep in a big event since then, because he was going into last year, 2022, well inside that top 16, 12th in the rankings, I think, going into the start of the year, but he wasn't able to kick on, and he wasn't able to replicate those deep runs in those major events. And if you're not maintaining that form or pushing on, there is only one way you're going to go. And as we've seen, there's been a drop down the rankings for him, and it's not been a huge drop. He's still in that top 20, and you go towards the end of the year, he's provisionally around that 20 to 25 range, but he's someone that he's going to need to start having those runs on TV if he is going to get back in that top 16. But I found it interesting in his interview afterwards, he was saying it was another top 16 that he was more worried about. And you mentioned it, that the Pro Tour top 16. And I think that has got to be a big focus for him, because the title at the weekend is put him up to number 17. You look at the provisional list for the Euro Tours, the last 3 of them, he's not far off at all. So I think these Euro Tours coming up, they are going to be important. He has had to start qualifying for them again. He's qualified for the next 3, and you used the word momentum that Rod Studd likes to use last week. I think, there is a bit of momentum that he can build on here. He is going to be in these next 3 Euro Tours over the next few weekends, and if he hadn't qualified for those, it would have been a long break before we saw him playing again in a PDC competition. So we talk about timing in darts. this could be good timing for him, getting in those Euro tours straight after this Players' Championship win. And let's see if he can build on it and have some good runs on the stage over the next few weeks.
Now, we've talked maybe once this year, if not 10 times, about the winner of Players' Championship 10, Dirk van Dijvenbode. He's obviously 3 titles already this year, off to a flyer and then some. But let's do a word on the 2 beaten finalists. Player that we've talked about a lot in the past and a player we've almost never talked about, Jose de Sousa and Chris Landman.
Yeah, well, I will just touch on Dirk for a moment because we did find out something about him at the weekend, that he is a keen follower of the FDI index. A good friend of the show, Lendl, he was talking about that with Dan Dawson in his interview afterwards and saying that he used to be at number 2 on that. He's now down at number 3. Well, if he carries on the way he's going, he is going to be heading back up towards 2 and who knows, maybe number 1 one day, which is the rankings that are the most important. But yeah, just touching on the 2 finalists at the weekend and starting off with Saturday, Chris Landman, a surprise finalist, it's got to be said. There's not been many occasions over the years where we've seen non-tour card holders win Players' Championships or make finals. We have spoken about one already on the show, Krzysztof Ratajski. He picked up another title at the weekend. But you look at Chris Landman's averages, and this is coming off of Darts Oracle, and last year he was around 84.5. This year he's up at 88, so he's put on 4 points on his averages. So we've seen him really improve, and maybe that has been the extra competition that he's had in these PDC events, because he's someone that we've seen play at Ali Pali before, but we've not seen him a great deal in the Players' Championship events, I don't think. But the good start that he's had on the Challenge Tour this year, winning a title, it has put him in a lot more of the Players' Championship events. And yeah, you can say he did have a little bit of luck on the way. The game against Martin Schindler, missed those match darts. He was 5-2 down and won 6-5 in a nervy decider. And the game against Luke Humphreys, I was having a look back at that game. Luke not as clinical on the doubles as we expect, but every credit to Chris Landman. 3-1 down, I think he was in that game, got it back to 4-4, and then he takes out a 1-1-4 to hold, and then he breaks with a 130 to win the game 6-4. So 2 good finishes there to get over the line against the ProTour number 1, which is a big scalp. And fair to say he made the most of every opportunity that came his way and to get to a final. And who knows where this is going to go for him. Could he end up qualifying for Minehead, the Players' Championship finals, get to the World Championships via the Pro Tour list? There's a lot of the season to go, but getting to finals is certainly going to help his case. And with Jose de Sousa, a bit like we spoke about Krzysztof Ratajski, someone that has had a lot of deep runs on the floor on a consistent basis, year in, year out, not for the last few years. And you go back 2 years ago, we talk about stage events, it was Jose de Sousa, Michael van Gerwen battling it out for top spot in the Premier League, and it went down to that penultimate game of the season, Michael winning it 8-6 to go 3 points clear, and Jose ended up going further that in that event, making the final, and he was throwing 100 plus averages for fun. He won over 100 games in 2021, but since then we have seen a drop off for him. He didn't get in the Premier League last year, perhaps a little bit unfortunate. This year I don't think he was in contention at all, and this year it has been about rebuilding, going again for him. And he's someone that we've talked about on the show. We've opened up the show saying, is he the best player in the world at times? And he is a world-class player, but this is it's been a challenging time, it's got to be said for him. I think his confidence has taken a few knocks over the last 12, 18 months. There's been some tough defeats in there. We might see him drop out of that top 16 over the next few months. Before the match play, there's going to be 3 titles that he won on the floor from 2 years ago that are going to be dropping off over the next few months. But reaching a final, it's a good stepping stone for him, I think, and he's got to take some belief from that. Maybe it's a little stepping stone that, there's going to be bigger ones to come if he can get some big wins on the stage, but I think it is a step in the right direction, and if he can keep this going, maybe he can start challenging for those titles again.
I mean, obviously he already is challenging for the titles. He made a final, but I guess more regularly, obviously. And there have been some signs that he's at least getting better. We saw it at the Euro Tour the previous weekend where he is playing better than he had been, but he is still well off of, as you mentioned, where he was when he was at his best, when he was challenging at the top end of the Premier League table, when he was at the top for much of the year of the averages in the Players' Championship events, when he was at one of the top players on the European Tour that year as well. he's not anywhere near that. Before making the final, he hadn't even won his board. He's lost in the first round of 4 of the Players' Championship events to date. That's one fewer than half. So there was a lot that was left to be desired, and he's barely in the top 40 of the averages so far this year, which, as I said, he was challenging for first a few years ago. Now he's barely in the top 40. That said, he is playing a bit better, and it has to give him a lot of confidence. And it's a time when he really needed, because he's just trying to get back into, like we were talking about for Krzysztof Ratajski, get into that top 16, get into the Eurotours. And getting a few results at the last Eurotour helped that. Getting 8,000 pounds by making a final is going to help that. And I think what will give him even more confidence is how he got there. It obviously was not an easy run. He only had to play the Pro Tour #1 in the last 16. One of the players who's been threatening every single week in the quarterfinals, a guy who's won through 8 Eurotour qualifiers so far in the semifinal, and then play probably the best player right now on the floor in the final. That's not a run you would want when you need to have the confidence, when you need to get a confidence boost. And look at what he did in that last 16. 5-3 down to Luke Humphries, held, broken 15 darts. It's not going to be often that Humphries gives you 15 darts to break him, but he did, and he took it out. He got it done, and then he held throw. And then what did he do in the next round? 5-3 down to Martin Schindler again, held, broken 13 darts, and then held to win 6-5. To come back consecutive matches against 2 players, one who, okay, he's not playing as well as he did last year, but still is in the top 8 in terms of averages so far this year in Players' Championship, still is a threat every single time in Luke Humphries. And then Martin Schindler, who's been playing really well, just can't get over the line yet, to come back from 5-3 down back-to-back matches, especially when you haven't gone deep in a tournament yet, shows that fight and resolve is still there for Jose. And maybe that things are just now turning the corner. As far as Chris Landman, as you mentioned, not much to indicate that this was coming. But at the same time, he's been playing all right. He's gotten into all of the Players' Championship events because he's been doing pretty well in the Challenge Tour events. And okay, he lost 3 consecutive in the first round, but since then, in the 5 after that, he won his board in 3 of them. Obviously, the final was one of those 3, but he had made a quarterfinal in Players' Championship final, and he made a last 16, the next one, beating Jose de Sousa along the way, beating Andrew Gilding, who just a week earlier had won the UK Open along the way. He's had some signs that this was in the locker. And, he beat, again, Humphries and Schindler on the route to the final, just like Jose did. Also beat Mike de Decker, played really well in that match. De Decker has had a breakthrough year so far. It was certainly surprising, but there had been some signs that he could have a run like this in him. And now in the last 6 events, he's made at least the last 16, at least won his board in half of them. If he keeps this up and if he keeps playing well on the Challenge Tour, he's putting himself in contention to qualify for the Players' Championship finals, maybe sneak into the World Championships through the Pro Tour Order of Merit. And that's tough to do, especially if he's not getting into the Euro Tour events. But 8,000 pounds for the final, 3,000 for the quarterfinal, 2,000 for the board that he won, just those 3 events. I don't know if that's 13,000. I don't know if if 26,000 would be enough, but it will give him a chance. And he has, in half the season, just in 3 events, he's done that. That means, sorry, not in half the season, in a third of the season, he's done half of what will give him a chance to make the World Championships. That's a good start, and it gives him something to really build on in the second half. And even if it doesn't, even if he has to go to Q School next year, he's going to fancy his chances because, well, he's just beaten a lot of the best players in the world on his way to a Pro Tour final.
Now we'll move on to our first guest on this week's show. He is a player that has won 2 Players' Championships. He is a former major semi-finalist. He's a new tour card holder for this year. Here's our chat with Jeffrey de Zwaan. I'm pleased to say I'm joined by the former major semi-finalist Jeffrey de Zwaan. Thanks for the time, Jeffrey. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing great, by the way, man. How are you?
Doing good, thank you, and appreciate the time, because I know it's been a busy 2023 so far for yourself, winning back your tour card at Q School, being back on the tour, but starting from scratch in the rankings again. How do you reflect on your year so far?
Well, at the beginning I was playing well, my shoulder is feeling really great at the moment, so you can also see that at average what I'm playing and the games what I'm doing, so even like, beating Gerwyn Price at the UK Open. So I'm feeling really great. It's a busy schedule, but it's also lovely to play again on the Pro Tour.
Well, there's lots to get to. I had a look back. The last time we had you on the show was in the summer of 2018, so coming up for 5 years ago, and it was just after your run to the semi-finals of the World Match Play. What memories have stuck with you from that run?
I had really great memories about the World Match Play in 2018. First round beating Michael van Gerwen, afterwards playing Adrian Lewis, was also a tough game, but glad that I win that one. After that, Dave Chisnell, also a great game for me, and then reaching the semi-finals, that was an amazing feeling, and lucky for me that I lost against Gary Anderson, also the winner of that year. But I had a really great experience on the World Match Play, and that was like my breakthrough year, probably, because after 2019 I was number 20 of the world.
Yeah, and looking back at that time, the end of 2018, you were back at Ali Pali for the first time in a few years, and you actually played twice on the opening night. You opened the show against Nitin Kumar, and then you had that 106 average against Rob Cross, but finished up on the losing side. What was the experience like playing twice on the same night?
It was okay, to be honest. I played against Nitin Kumar the first one, and you already had the feeling that you were on stage, and I don't know. I probably liked it a bit, because you get that feeling and playing Rob Cross in the evening. But I really liked it. I had a really great game against Rob Cross as well, 106 average. But lucky for me that I lost that one. That was for me the World Championships from that year. Yeah.
And moving on, you've had a taste of the Premier League since we've spoken as well, twice as a challenger or a contender, and that the first one of those 2019 in Rotterdam. How special was it to play in front of a big home crowd like that?
Oh, that was amazing, mate. That was really amazing. The thing was that in my home crowd, 10,000, I think almost 10,000 people were shouting my name. That was unbelievable feeling. That still give me goosebumps when I'm thinking about it, or just seeing on YouTube when I'm seeing the people shouting for me. It still gives me goosebumps.
Good times. Well, not long after that, you picked up your second senior title. You won another Players' Championship. You averaged 100 for the day, and by this point, you are well established in that top 32. What was it like being in that position after a few years on the tour?
If you reach like the top 32 and getting to the top 16 of the Pro Tour of Merit, then you're achieve a big thing, because you're qualified for like a couple of TV tournaments, you qualified for the European tours directly, so it was a little bit more relaxing than when you starting from scratch. And that was the feeling for me, that it was a little bit relaxing for me, that I already achieved that, and if I can keep myself in this position, that will be great. But luckily for me, I got some shoulder problems for like 2.5 years, and really dropped down afterwards. And I'm glad that I'm back now in this year.
Good to hear. Well, let's just touch on that next World Championship, because, as I say, you're in the top 32. You go into it as a seed, and you had that potential meeting with Raymond van Barneveld in what was at the time going to be his last World Championship, but he lost out to Darren Young in the first round. How disappointed were you to miss out on playing your mentor on the Ali Pali stage?
To be honest, I was a bit disappointed, because I really wanted to play Raymond, because he was my mentor in the beginning of my career, and how would it be, playing Raymond in his last year on the World Championships, playing him as a prodigy, and maybe beat him, that would be amazing. But it was a little bit sad that Raymond lost that one. But I'm glad that I reached the last 16 that year as well.
Yeah, and you got a bit of revenge for Raymond beating Darren Young in that game, and then you got past Dave Chisnell 4-3, and again another 106 average for you on the big stage. And what is it like to come through games like that, especially when they are so close and in the biggest tournament that there is?
It gives you amazing feeling, mate, that you can perform at such a high level in that kind of tournament. You know, it's the World Championships. Everyone wants to perform over there because, you want to be the world champion. Maybe you won the days, or even, like the top players are already been a world champion. They still want to be, like if you're win it twice, still want to get the third one. So it's a great feeling that I can perform on that high level, and hopefully, one of these days I want to be the world champion as well.
Definitely. Well, that year was one of your best runs, getting to the last 16, and a memorable game with Peter Wright. 3-0 down in sets, you bring it back to 3-0, and Peter just pips you 5-3 in that last set. What do you remember about that game?
It was a strange game for me, to be honest, but getting 3-0 down, and I think Peter Wright still need one leg to even win it 4-0, and that I got that first set for myself. I was thinking, okay, just keep on going, see where it goes, and I'm starting to get the crowd involved, so I was a little bit playing with the crowd from, all right, come on guys, just cheer me up a bit, and then I've got back to 3-3, and I know the tie break. I think I missed one or two dots. I'm not that sure, but that was the thing that I missed, and Peter Wright hit it, and afterwards he had a great leg, so that's why I'm losing that one. But it was a little bit strange game, but it was also really fun to do.
Well, we'll come on to more recent times in a moment, but as we mentioned, that was at the time Raymond's last World Championship, but since then he has come out of retirement. He's won his tour card back at Q-School. He's now back in the world's top 32, and as we know, you and Raymond, you go back a long time. You've both got the same manager, Ben de Kock, as well. What did you make of his comeback so far, and are you two practicing much together at the moment?
Yeah, we were practicing really a lot. We're practicing like almost every day, even if, when the shadow is also capable to do that. But we're practicing a lot. I'm seeing things from Raymond, what I never seen Raymond could do that, or what I'm thinking about Raymond. So he's playing phenomenal also in practice, and that is also what you see, what he's accomplished this year, what he qualified for almost every European tour event this year so far, and he's also doing really well on the tour. So Raymond is, I think it's hard to say, but I think Raymond is in his top now what he's ever been.
Wow, that is a very high level from what we've seen in the past. Well, let's get back to you then, and you did touch on it about your struggles that you've had with injuries over the last few years with your shoulder, and I read an interview you did recently with, I think it was the guys at Darts News, where you spoke about the treatment that you've been having since the end of last year. Can you talk us through that, and how is the injury now?
Yeah, the thing is, when it all started, it was really struggling for me because every dart that I'm throwing, I was in real pain. So that is the one thing where I'm really struggling with. And also mental wise, you know that you're capable to play at a high level, but you can't reach it, or I can't play like that what I used to. So it was mentally wise, it was also really tough for me. And I've been last year to an other physiotherapist, and we started Traject like 6 or 8 weeks, and so he treated my shoulder and everything. We did some exercises to get my shoulder like back in shape, and that is the thing what really works for me at the moment. I don't have pain anymore. My shoulders, it's getting better and better, and that is also what you see in the averages and in the games that I played in this year. Also, like the UK Open against Gerwyn Price, that was an amazing, great feeling for myself that I'm seeing that I still can play like that. Also on the major tournaments, and that I perform like that. Yeah, that was also an amazing feeling for myself, and yeah, that my shoulder's getting better and better. That's really lovely.
Good to hear, and let's get on to this year then. And at the end of last year, you finished outside the top 64. It was back to Q School, but of course you've won your tour card at Q School twice before, but this was the first time that you've been to Q School with there being the two stages, and you went straight through to that second stage. What did you make of the new format? Are you a fan of it?
Yeah, but the thing, the first year I've played to Q School was in the UK, so everyone needs to go to the UK, and we're playing all together for all the spots for the tour card holders. And the second time I went to the Q School was in Germany, so it was already separately, and that was still like 4 days playing, and everyone is in one tournament. So, and the third time, like this year, what I played it was difficult, because that all the players who are in stage 2, they're really good players, and you need to perform at your greatest performance, and to reach a good tour card. And the first 2 days were tough. I also what I think a little bit tough draw. But I'm glad that on day 3 that everything comes together, and then I played really well on the third day.
Yeah, you go all the way on the third day, get your tour card back, and this is the first time going to Q School since having all that success, the titles, the major runs, getting to the world's top 20. What's it been like getting your card back, resetting back to 0 on the rankings and starting again? Have you seen it as a fresh challenge for you?
Yeah, just a new start, a fresh start. Also, a big relief that I got my tour card back as well. So yeah, it's just a new start, and just starting fresh from scratch, and building up again. And that is what I want to do.
And you're still very young in darts terms. You only turned 27 last month, but you've been playing darts, I think, since you were 8. So almost 20 years now. What are your proudest moments you've had in darts so far?
I've got a lot, mate. I've achieved really a lot in my career, and I want to achieve loads more. So in the 20 years what I'm playing now for darts, that's the thing is, if I'm looking backwards to all those years, what I've already achieved and what I did, I already have an amazing career. So, and I want to make it more amazing.
Well, let's just get on to the last few weeks, and we touched on the win against Gerwyn Price at the UK Open, the 105 average. You've beaten a few of the big names already on the tour since getting your card back. You've also been on the Euro Tour recently as well, getting a win in the first round there. But for you, what's it been like being back on the tour these last few months?
To be back on the tour, nothing changed, to be honest. It's the way you're feeling that I'm starting fresh. It gives me a bit of relaxing instead from like when you're in your second year or maybe your third year, you need to defend your first year. And now I'm starting from scratch, so I can build up, just getting on going up on the order of merit. So yeah, that is the most feeling what I got.
And you're on the Euro Tour again this upcoming weekend out in Austria, and as we touched on before we started, you've just been playing the Pro Tours, the Euro Tour qualifiers. You got a few days at home, then you're back on the road again. But how much are you looking forward to this weekend, another chance to get up on the stage?
Oh, I'm really looking forward to this weekend. The thing is, I'm really loving the Euro Tour because with the crowd and everything, it's something special as always, and that's why I really love the Euro to play the Euro Tour. And we're going to Austria, and the most of the times that I'm qualifying is the tournaments for Austria. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to it.
And just lastly, before we let you go, after the last few Pro Tours, you have got yourself in a provisional spot for the World Championship. And I know there's a long way to go in the season yet, but what is the main goal for you in this first year with a card again? Is the focus to get back to Ali Pali, or what is the main goal you're looking at?
No, the main thing what I'm thinking about is getting back to Ali Pali, definitely. That is the tournament where what I want to stand on in this year. So the only thing where I'm thinking about.
Well, Jeffrey, thanks very much for taking the time to join us. Wish you all the best for this weekend in Austria and on that goal on getting back to Ali Pali at the end of the year.
Hopefully, yeah. Cheers, thank you.
Free beer, anyone? Now that I've got your attention, the weekly Dartscast are excited to be partnering up with the guys at Beer52 to offer our listeners a free case of beers. Head on over to beer52.com/darts and cover the postage cost of £5.95 to claim your free case of beers from our good friends at Beer52. I've just got on board with Beer52, and as a member each month, they send me a case of unique and varied beers from a different part of the world. Imagine that. Each month trying out beers from a different country. In the last 10 years, Beer52 have been to 40 different countries, including the US, Australia and Germany, and they've also included a range of breweries in the UK too. So, to claim your free case of beers, go to beer52.com/darts. Thank you for listening, and enjoy the darts and enjoy your beers, and let's get back to the rest of the show.
Thanks again to Jeffrey for joining us. Now onto some sad news that we found out since we last recorded on Friday. Bob Potter passing away at the age of 94. He is the owner, of course, of the Lakeside. How will Bob be remembered in the world of darts?
I mean, he's one of the forefathers of global mainstream darts, because the Lakeside is such an iconic venue for what was, for a long time, the most important tournament in the world. And okay, the World Championship started before it went to the Lakeside. It started in 78. It was only 8 years later that it went to the Lakeside after going to a few venues before that. But it stayed there once it went there for over 3 decades. Well, I mean, the WDF World Championship is still there now. It saw some of the great moments in darts, and prior to the split, it was the most important event. So it hosted 8 world championships that were undisputed world championships, and he was a big reason for that. And for a while, he was a big reason the BDO still existed, because of his sponsorship of the BDO World Championship, of him making sure it had a home, from him making sure that it had a sponsor and had a platform that it could be broadcast to Britain and much of Europe from, kept the BDO solvent when otherwise it wouldn't have been. That Lakeside, with that £100,000 first prize, over £300,000, when most BDO events, even the World Masters, was only a fraction of that, was huge for the organization, huge for the players, to have that carrot to play for, to go around the world. And often it was around the world, at the very least around Europe, but sometimes players would go to events in Australia or in the Americas to try to get those ranking points, to make sure they qualified, because of that carrot, that £100,000. And even if you don't win at £35,000 to the runner-up, was so big that it kept the BDO circuit and players committed to it. And some players from even switching over for a while, at least, to the PDC, until the finances just really became, if you were good enough and you wanted to try to test yourself, you had no choice. Bob Potter made that possible by making sure that the BDO had a place that it could play and had that sponsorship. I think he should be remembered for that. He was the reason the BDO survived as long as it did, because he made sure that the Lakeside was there, and he will be missed. And even though the BDO is no more, the history is always, and it lives on through its cousin in the WDF. And as long as that's at the Lakeside, a little bit of Bob Potter will always be in darts.
Yeah, well said. You're absolutely spot on there. And I've got to say, we tried to get Bob Potter on the show a couple of years ago. I think it was just after the WDF announced that their World Championship was going to be held at the Lakeside, so World Championship darts coming back to the Lakeside, and we thought about getting Bob on the show, and I spoke with I think it was his PA or his secretary about getting him on, and she said, you do realise Bob is, I think it was 91 or 92 at the time, and I've got to say, I couldn't believe he was that old, but to get to 94 is incredible, to reach that age. And yeah, he was someone that still had that love and passion for the game, even in his later years as well. And you could see that when he got back involved in darts. We saw the BDO take their World Championship away from the Lakeside, and the WDF stepped in a few years later, and there was only one place that they wanted to go, and that was Lakeside, and Bob agreed to it because he does have that love for the game, and I think his contribution to darts, the Lakeside Country Club, he owned, hosted the BDO World Championship for all those years, I think 34 years in the end, and then the WDF last year, we've got it for at least another 3 years as well, and I've been to the Lakeside a couple of times now, a few days during the last BDO championships there, and then the return under the WDF last year, and even all these years later, the venue, for a darts fan, as I am first and foremost, it just carries, I think magic is the word. It's a special venue, and I've been fortunate to go to more modern venues where there's been bigger crowds. The infrastructure, the venues themselves are a lot fresher, shall we say, but I think the history in that place, from all those years, you think back to all those classic matches, the moments that have happened in there, it's still such a special place for darts, and it's always going to be. And nowadays there are going to be players coming through, youngsters that their dream isn't going to be to play at Lakeside, it's going to be to play at Ali Pali, to play in the Premier League. But I think for a lot of generations that the Lakeside is still going to hold a high place for them. And as you touched on there, Bob's support for the BDO and then the WDF last year has played a big part in that. And I think that's what he's going to be remembered for mostly, is that commitment to the game for such a long period of time. And you mentioned about the financial situation there. He was fronting up a lot of the money as title sponsor for a number of those years as well. And, you know, we had our chat with Des Jacklin on the show last week, and he spoke about the BDO's move away from Lakeside at the end of 2019, going into 2020 to the O2. And he said in the last few weeks before the tournament went ahead, one of the big sponsors pulled out. And as a result, the prize fund dropped substantially. And you think back to the previous year, at Lakeside, they were fronting up the prize fund of 100 grand for the men's winner, Glenn Durrant, taking that check home for 3 years in a row. And the next year, the first one without that backing from Lakeside, it was 23 grand. So I think that tells you how much the support Lakeside was for the BDO and was for darts. And, you know, we send our best wishes to Bob's family and his friends. It's a sad time. And I think for darts fans, the name Bob Potter, the Lakeside venue, is going to be synonymous with the world of darts for a long, long time to come.
Yes, just echo those thoughts, obviously, with the entire Potter family and all of their friends as well. Now, we'll get to our picks in a moment, but a fourth Premier League title of the season for Gerwyn Price, and it's moved him within 2 points of what just a few weeks ago looked like an almost insurmountable lead at the top spot for Michael van Gerwen. Do you think Gezi will catch MVG?
Yeah, all of a sudden it's got quite interesting at the top. I think back to night 4 when Michael van Gerwen won, and then he won 3 nights in a row, and he was pretty clear at the top. But since then, it's been Welsh dominance. We've seen Gerwyn Price win back-to-back nights, then Johnny Clayton win back-to-back, and now Gerwyn Price has won again, and the gap between Michael van Gerwen at the top and Gerwyn Price is 2 points. And I think if you ask the two players, MVG, he's probably more concerned about finishing top. He likes to set his stall out, go into the finals night as the top seed. It's a position that he's gotten used to having over the last 10, 11 years that he's been in the Premier League. Whereas Gerwyn Price, I think he said it quite recently, last week or the week before, he's not fussed about finishing top. He just wants to finish in that top 4. And I guess it is two players that have got different Premier League experiences, haven't they? You've got MVG, who's got a record 6 titles alongside Phil Taylor, and then you've got Gerwyn Price, who's had a lot of success winning the World Championship and a lot of majors, but that black mark on his CV, if you like, he's not made it to the top 4 in the Premier League yet. So I think for him that the big focus is getting in that top 4, and I think that's why I'm probably going to lean towards Michael van Gerwen. And the two of them, they are in opposite sides of the draw, I think, pretty much now until Manchester in a few weeks' time when they play each other in the quarterfinals. Aside from that, they are going to be on opposite sides of the draw, so they really can't affect the others' hopes unless they play in finals again. So really it's something we're not going to see the other make an impact on the others' hopes, really, unless they get to the finals or indeed that game in a few weeks' time in Manchester. So for me, I'm going to go with MVG. I'd say that the form line would sway towards Gerwyn Price the way that he's playing, and I'm sure we'll touch on it, the performances that he put in last week, that 115 average, the 108 in the next round. If you're looking at form, you're going with Gerwyn Price, but I just think the hunger that MVG has to finish top is going to get him over the line for me. So I'm going to go MVG 1, Gerwyn Price 2 for this one.
Ooh, are we in disagreement before we even get to the official picks? We might be. I'm really, really impressed with where where Gerwyn Price's game is right now. I mean, I'm also impressed with MVG's game. He's not playing poorly. He's playing close to as well as he's ever played, at least in the last few years, in terms of consistency and how, or at least consistently bringing his A or A minus game. But Gezzy's playing, and I mentioned this a couple of weeks ago, and I'll mention it again. He's playing at the level that MVG played at when MVG was at his best. And he's now maintained it for over a month. And I don't think anyone has ever maintained this level for that long other than MVG and Phil Taylor. Yes, it's only a month. MVG had that level for 3 years. Phil Taylor had that level for the better part of 15 years. He had some times where he dropped off. He had not, and I don't just mean short terms, like Phil Taylor in like 2007, 2008 dropped off for a good 18 months, but then he lifted to levels that he had never been at before for another 4 years after that. So like Phil Taylor would maintain that level for years, as did MVG. Gezzy's done it for a month, but I don't remember anyone being able to really play at that 105, 106 level for that long other than those two. Obviously, players can do it for a match. Some players can do it for an entire tournament. Heck, Mickey Mansell did it for an entire tournament and winning a players' championship event. But to be able to play at this level for this long is something we haven't seen. And I don't know whether he can keep it going. But as long as he can, he's going to be the favorite every single night, or at least should be the favorite every single night of the Premier League. And you mentioned that MVG cares more about finishing top. Gezzy doesn't. That actually is a reason why maybe it's going to be Gezzy's advantage. He's not playing with that pressure to prove that he's the best in the world, because right now he is the best in the world. And he's just going to go out and play and without having anything to prove. I do want to say one more thing on, that level, because the other counterpoint that I'm sure people are saying is, well, when MVG was at his best, he was winning half the tournaments, and Gezzy isn't winning half the tournaments. He's not that far off from it recently, but he's not. But that's because the quality overall is higher. The number of players who can throw a 105 back at you has increased, and how often those players can do it has also increased. So Gezzy right now, while I think he is as good as MVG was at MVG's best, he's not as far ahead of everyone else as MVG was at that time. That's the big difference here. And that means that Gezzy could be doing this in the Premier League and still not winning. I mean, he could have lost that semifinal last week to MVG. They both were playing phenomenally. Gezzy got over the line. And that means it's going to be tougher, even when he's playing on that level, to go all the way. But as long as he's playing like this, he's going to be tough to beat. And yes, he might have an off match. He averaged under 90 not that long ago in a match in the Premier League, but that's an exception. Most of the time, he's averaging well north of 100, and if he's doing that, he's gonna be playing. He's gonna catch and surpass MVG.
Get to our Premier League picks in a moment, but let's get to our final guest on this week's show, and he is the CEO of the CDC. Here's our chat with Peter Citera.
I'm joined today by the CEO of the Championship Darts Corporation, Peter Citera. Peter, how are you?
Hey, Burton, doing wonderfully. It's good to be back with you. Always enjoy being on the Dartscast.
Of course, I've had you on a couple times before, and as you mentioned right before we started recording, you're on for our 301st episode. So I have to start by asking, when you're playing 301, what double do you try to get in on?
I typically like the tops, but typically it's double one that I end up actually hitting. So, and it's an honor to be with you on your 301st episode. I think last time I was joking about me being on for the 300th, so we missed it by one, but definitely a good darts number.
Yeah, I usually don't get in on 301 double in, but otherwise maybe double one would be the double. Now, a busy week for the CDC with the first ever cross-border challenge taking place in Jersey City. How's the preparation going to launch this new event this weekend?
It's It's going real well. Obviously, it's crunch time. And so we've got staff on the ground in Jersey at the moment. David Irete, our production director, is there with a few of other our staff. And, we're doing some last minute preparation, getting graphics, prepping for commercials. So it's going well. Anthony Eugenia did yeoman's work putting together a run of show. And so, we've got a real tight plan to follow, and we're excited to put it on. I can't wait to see what this event becomes. Preparation's going great.
Now, of course, it was an event which you first announced back in November of last year. 16 players, 8 Americans, 8 from Canada, facing each other in the first round. And the winner gets a spot in the U.S. Darts Masters in June. When the event was first announced, you mentioned about reigniting the rivalry between the United States and Canada. So talk us through how this event came about.
So, this event is interesting. Usually when we come up with events, we've got some sort of long-standing plan, and we start to add events to the calendar, as they seem to make sense. Anthony has about 15 different special events drawn up in his legendary notebook. We talk about where we want to go with events, but this one it presented itself. There was an opportunity we weren't looking for that presented itself. So one of the people that works at White Eagle Hall. So first of all, White Eagle is owned by a very large media corporation. It's the same corporation that owns the New Jersey Devils hockey team. They own the one of the major arenas in the Prudential Center. And so, they do a lot of things, and they have this venue, the White Eagle Hall, that's in their portfolio. And the gentleman who we were working with, he used to be with Madison Square Garden. And so he and Matt Porter were working together, well before COVID, right? For that first U.S. Darts Masters that was supposed to happen in Madison Square Garden, the one everybody was excited about for 2020. They were working to get that planned. And then in the interim, the individual moved and found another position. But Matt put me in touch with him. We went out, we looked at the venue, and it's a perfect venue for darts. The atmosphere is great. It's cozy. It has a balcony. It's got a great stage. The audio is good. Like, it's everything you would look for if you wanted to put on a darts event in an intimate setting. And so when the opportunity presented itself, we evaluated it hard internally and decided, we're going to try to make this thing work because missing that opportunity didn't seem to make sense. It's one of those things where you've got to, seize the day, right? Carpe diem. And it presented itself. So we decided to move forward with it. The U.S.-Canada angle, when you're talking about putting together an event that you want to make a compelling story to, you've got two countries. It's just logic that you can put both of the kind of the countries together and set up that storyline, that narrative. Who's the best, right? Is Canada going to take the day? Is the U.S. going to, steamroll the Canadians? There's a lot of subtext here. So, it's an individual event. There's no doubt, obviously, but there's also that team aspect to it as well. And I'll say this and then let you kind of continue. We introduced a couple of weeks ago the concept of the Nations Cup. And so in this event, every match is worth 1 point to the winning player's country. And so the first team to 8 points will win the Nations Cup. And so we're really excited about that. Gives you some nation bragging rights there too.
Of course. And Canada will probably be out for revenge after the U.S. Women's destroyed them in the hockey gold medal game the other night. Hopefully Canada won't get that.
As I think I'm a huge hockey fan. I am going to refrain from giving our Canadian friends more motivation to come and destroy the Americans. How about that?
I don't want to give them motivation either. Now, some interesting ties on the Friday in the first round. And if any of our listeners are in the area, tickets are still available. I think they're $30 to watch in person. Is it going to be streamed as well? Or is there other ways to watch it for people who can't make it?
Yes, as a matter of fact, it will be. I know we haven't announced that yet. We've been working on some things behind the scenes that we had hoped to bring to fruition before this event, which is why we've kind of been mum on where we're streaming. But we are definitely streaming. We will be live on PDC TV, and we will also be live on our YouTube channel, which is at YouTube at Champ Darts. So, we're going to go to a place we haven't typically gone. We've typically been a Facebook kind of, when we've publicly streamed, it's typically been to Facebook. But, we're kind of committing to making more content available on YouTube. It's better for searching content. It's better for archival content. And so, that's kind of where we decided to go with this. You mentioned tickets are still available. We'd love to see more people in the venue. I think that ticket sales, they're not necessarily exactly where we wanted them. So we'd love to have more people show up and join us. But regardless of that, the event is going to be amazing. It's going to be great, whether you're watching it right there or whether you're watching it online. It's going to be just high quality darts. The format is exciting, right? We've got best of 7 in the first round, which, that's a shorter format. That anything can happen, as you know, in a shorter format. And I'd like to address some questions we got there. People are saying, well, hey, listen, it should be a longer format. Well, the tour is a long format, right? Our tours starts at 9 and then 11 and then 13. But here we are, we went shorter. And the reason we went shorter is it's the first time at a venue. We've got this contract we have to fulfill. It gets real expensive as you go over your contractual time. You start getting into overtime. You start getting into, union costs and all of that. And so we got to manage to a tight timeline. And I mentioned that Anthony drew up that show, and it's great. But so that's the reason you see the shorter matches in the early round. And it adds excitement as well. So I think that format is going to make for some great viewing.
Now, we just looked ahead, but let's look back. We last had you on at the start of June last year, right ahead of the U.S. Darts Masters, the first ever staging at the iconic Madison Square Garden, the first World Series event in the U.S. in 3 years because of COVID canceling it, or postponing it, I guess was the technical term, for a couple of years. From your perspective, though, how did that weekend go, and how much interest did the event capture across North America?
Burton, it was electric. Being in that venue where it was not quite full, but darn near. It was loud. It was raucous. It was exactly, I think, what the PDC wanted. The planning came to fruition and delivered quality competition. And in fairness, both in the U.S. Darts Masters and in the North American Championship, it delivered quality competition, and the crowd did what we wanted the crowd to do. It truly did showcase the fact that we are, capable here in North America of putting together a crowd that understands darts and gets into it and wants to, quote unquote, party. So from that perspective, I don't think it could have been a better of a success than it was.
Well, looking ahead, it's just a month and a half off now before the second staging. What's the buildup been like so far this time around? Are you expecting a similar number of tickets sold and meet your interest? Do you think it might even grow on last year?
We certainly hope that we see the same level of interest. One thing I have to note is that the economy today is a lot different than it was this time last year, especially, all over the world. But, here in North America, especially the United States, people are starting to feel the pinch. And I know they're feeling the pinch globally. But, it's interesting when you look at the PDC events in Europe and the PDC events in the UK, they haven't necessarily seen the same level of challenge in terms of getting people to events. I think that has a lot to do with our event as well in terms of, ticket sales. Right now, it's more expensive. It's a challenge. People have to decide where they're going to commit their dollars. So I'm optimistic that we can get where we got before. I'd like to see more. There certainly is a lot of chatter about how awesome the event is going to be, but we'll see, what the economics play out as. However, I will say, given economics, there are some good discounts out there. So if you're looking to buy tickets to the PDC U.S. Darts Masters and North American Championship, we actually have a discount code you can use. It'll save you 33% off tickets, which is a great deal. The code is CDC33. So if you use that code, unlock the offer at checkout, CDC33, all bowl seats, not tables, but all the seats in the bowl are 33% off. That's true for a 2-day pass or individual days. So certainly there's a great chance to get value for your investment.
Yeah, 33 is also, I think, my 3-dart average right now. Now, we know most of the field for MSG, a lot of the big boys from the PDC. We also know a lot of the North American players from the PDC Tour are in, obviously. But so is Alex Spellman. He won the Continental Cup towards the end of 2022. He's a name that's coming up a lot more regularly now, just also played in the Modus League. What can you tell us about Alex?
You know, Alex, for my first introduction to Alex Spellman was all the way back when we started this thing, our first year, which was 2015. Alex came. He was kind of an early adopter of the system. He kind of bought into the vision, and he was there and he played. And I don't think his game got to where he wanted it to be. He had other work commitments, and so decided it was not the right time to play CDC. In the meantime, obviously, he's worked on his game. He's a very analytical guy. He's a guy who can sit there and watch footage of himself and figure out exactly where the minutia of what might be different today than yesterday, and how to correct and how to consistently make himself better. He and John Part are very similar in that analytical aspect. Alex is also a guy who's he's pretty unflappable. So he's just calm. He's collected, whether he's up 5-0 or down 5-0 or 5-1. It's the same Alex Spellman. And you mentioned the Continental Cup. Well, he had a massive comeback to beat Doug Boehm in the final, and only a guy who's truly unflappable can generally pull something like that off. You bite off a dart at a time, then you bite off a leg at a time. And if I do this, then I'll have another shot the next leg. I just got to break him here. Then I hold throw. That's the kind of stuff that goes through Alex's mind. He is a top quality player. You'll see a lot more of him on the international stage. He obviously has the talent, and I'm really excited to see where he can go.
Of course, quite a few players in North America have the talent. It's great to see people in Europe start to appreciate that. Leonard Gates being one of those players that now has broken through. Obviously, doing really well on the senior tour this year. But before that, he qualified through the qualifiers for the U.S. Darts Masters, and also went on to win the North American Championship. And the big thing that brought him was that it got him a spot at Ali Pali and a spot in the Grand Slam. How much of a boost was it to have a spot in the Grand Slam available for the North American champion?
It's interesting you mention that, because when we first started the partnership with the PDC, back when we were first trying to feel each other out and figure out, was there a symbiotic relationship here? I had asked Matt Porter about, hey, when are we going to get a spot in the Grand Slam? And he kind of gave me the whole patience grasshopper type of thing, right? So it wasn't the right time, and it wasn't the right time back then, right? You can see the level of play, how much it's increased across the board over here. Just look at our averages at our tournament weekends. But now it was the right time, and there was a spot available, and having the ability to get Leonard onto that stage and getting more exposure. At this point, the exposure for North American darts is vital. Getting people talking about us worldwide is something that's certainly important in terms of the fan aspect. And, we couldn't be happier that we got that spot. Now, we'll see what happens this year. We'll see how that goes. But yeah, having him basically break the ice there and get us into an event we've never been in before. Yeah, certainly that's an important thing. The Ali Pali spot, obviously the more people we can get up on that stage, and look at how many North Americans we had last year, right? So it's a testament to our players. It's a testament to, how well they're playing, how dedicated they are. And they're taking the opportunities that are given to them. And to be honest, I'm not one to toot our horn a lot, but it's a testament to the fact that the system we built works. And I'm again just really happy to see what's going on, and the next group of players that can come up and get themselves into those international opportunities.
Now, of course, you mentioned how important it is to get those North American players on stage. Of course, that is because CDC right now is a U.S. and Canadian based tour. Though we saw you last year, you were in Costa Rica for the Latin American and Caribbean qualifier for Ali Pali, where Diego Portela won on a dramatic weekend. We've had Diego on probably more times than almost anyone. And he's mentioned when we've had him on about wanting to work with the CDC to bring more darts to Latin America. Is there any progress or talks going on in that regard?
Yeah, actually there is. And so CDC is kind of the influence on a new organization that we formed. It's in partnership with CDC, right? So CDC is North America, and now we have I'll use the term affiliate. It's not technically affiliated in terms of the way the companies are set up, but for lack of a better term, we'll use the term affiliate, called the Championship Darts Latin America and Caribbean. So CDLC, that is the organization. And, we're in partnership. We've got a number of people who are working with us from the region. Jeff Good, one of our partners in CDC, lives in Costa Rica. So, he's able to take a leadership role in developing the talent down there and developing our plans. Diego Orozco from Costa Rica, Alex Metamora. There's a lot of people who are being able to play a role in growing there. It's a challenge in an aspect. I'm going to ramble here for a little bit because I'm really happy about what we're doing. But it's a challenge in an aspect that obviously, I don't speak a lick of Spanish. And so I'm working with partners that are fluent in Spanish and don't speak much English. So, we've kind of Google Translate has become our friend. But, we've managed to we've got an opportunity that we've taken, the World Cup qualifier. So we are next month in Costa Rica in May. We are going to see at least 15 teams, possibly more, face off for a spot in the World Cup. This is the first time that's been done. We've got people, I believe, if I remember correctly, there are 12 nations represented. I may be off by a couple. Don't hold me to that number. But, we just picked up another nation. We just picked up Uruguay yesterday. I mean, these are people that you would not have seen before, right? And so now we're pulling them together into the global stage. And it's going to be a development process, right? Just like CDC was a development process. We're further now than we were when we started. The floor here is a little bit lower, I think, than when it was here in North America when we started CDC. But we know the process works. And so now the goal is to replicate the process that we made work here down in Central and South America. And so this year, in addition to that World Cup qualifier I just mentioned, which again will be in San Jose, Costa Rica, we are going to expand the World Championship qualification process as well. We are planning 2 weekends. We're going to do one back in Costa Rica, and then we're going to do a second one in Chile. And so we're going to be covering kind of the gamut of Central and South America. And so instead of having a couple of qualifying events, we're going to have we're going to have 2 weekends to qualify as opposed to just one. That's going to in turn build. So the plan, and I'm working with Matt Porter behind the scenes, I have to give thanks to he and the board of the PDC for kind of sharing the vision. They've agreed to come in a little bit and give us a little bit of support for the tour. And so next year we plan to grow to 3 or 4 weekends. You'll probably see us in a Caribbean nation. So we'll probably be in, I believe it's Jamaica we're planning on. And so, in conjunction with the Caribbean Cup. And so, we're going to continue to build it. It's going to be its own tour that's going to eventually stand up and run on its own. The process is long. This is something it's not going to be tomorrow when you start seeing 14 people from Central America go over and start surprising people at the Worlds. You've got to start somewhere. And so we've put the framework and infrastructure in place to be able to really start to see that grow. And again, where it is 5 years from now, I see the passion that these people have and that our players have. And I know that if they continue that dedication, that there's no reason it can't be what CDC is.
And just a couple more questions. You mentioned a couple of times now the working with the PDC, doing so for a while now. And of course, the big news recently that the PDC announced a 3-year extension in their partnership with you guys. It's great to have that longevity now and locked in for at least 3 more years. How important is having the PDC support and having that partnership?
The partnership is fantastic. Obviously, there are things that we can't do without the PDC's trust and belief. There is no path to the World Championship and the Grand Slam and the World Cup. There is no path to that without the partnership with the PDC. And so it's really rewarding that they have the trust in us to be able to implement our vision. Obviously, we're a North American tour, so we also need to make sure that we focus on the North American opportunities, not just playing into England and the UK and Germany and all that. we also need to focus on opportunities here in North America. And so, I think you're going to see us try to develop some events that might be a little bit different than you've expected before. There's different things that we can do that'll focus more highlights on just North American play. But we're never, going to give up on or go away from qualifying people for international competition. The PDC made a big announcement a couple of weeks ago. They're working with a company called U.S. Integrity to get themselves listed on U.S. betting sites to be able to be available to be wagered on. That's got potential to really change the game. I've been talking with Matt Porter quite a bit about that. I'd love to see us be able to kind of break into that as well. And I think there's a path forward on that. So really excited about where that might go. That opportunity doesn't come without the PDC either. So there's a lot of things that, beyond just what people are seeing, there's a lot going on behind the scenes that they're not seeing that are opening doors that would never have been opened had we not had that partnership. So obviously it is vital, but we also have to make sure that we maintain our own identity. And, and that's kind of where we're trying to plan now to figure out, what that looks like, if that makes sense.
Now, lastly, last year when we had you on, you talked about the summer series events that weren't going to be just limited to CDC tour card holders, but were open to anyone. How have those events been received? And I know one of them is on the calendar because it's in my local area, but I think I'll be out of town, so I'm going to miss it. But can you tell us about what's on the calendar this year for the summer series?
Of course you're going to miss it, because why would we ever be in the same room at the same time? It's natural, right?
I've already on the other side of the country that weekend, I think, unfortunately.
Hey, you know what? At some point, our paths will actually cross. The summer series last year, we did well in some events. We did not so well in others because it was really, the first year of that type of event. The fact that we're open to anybody and we're doing more than just the one event. Like, we've done the match play every year, and that was, other than its first couple of years, it was an open entry event. But, we thought that it was time when our calendar is, not overly necessarily busy. Certainly we've got the regular tour weekends, but, we're not dealing with Q schools and other things. We thought it was great to partner with tournaments that are already happening to be able to bring CDC-style events to those tournaments. So this year, we actually added another event. That tells you kind of how they're going. We're really happy to continue to be able to offer opportunities outside of just our tour card holder, kind of core player base. So this year, we're going to be in Cleveland. That's where we kick off. We kick off with the CDC Midwest Melee. These have all got little twists and I think really kind of interesting names. So that's going to be a 301 double in, double out tournament, best of 11. When I mentioned to Matt that we were adding that fifth summer series event, and I kind of sent him the rundown, he comes back to me with just one word. He goes 301, and I said, well, if you think that's great, or you think that's a little out of the box, just wait until I tell you our World Championship qualifier is going to be cricket this year. Obviously, we kind of got a kick out of it. I think it gave him pause for a second, but we wanted to kind of expand. So that's the twist for that event, right? That event's going to be 301. Into the Cascades Classic, that's in Oregon. That's going to happen in June. That's our set play tournament. So 501, single and double out in sets. The shootout, the CDC shootout, which is an event that we started a number of years back, kind of put on hiatus, brought back last year. We're in Pennsylvania. We're at the Steel City Open for that one. That's on June 30th. And that is kind of a shootout, best of 7, all the way through, real short format. Anything can happen there. We move on to the match play. Match play is back where they've hosted us at the Music City Classic now for many years. It's a great partnership. They love having us there. We love being there. And that's our match play event, obviously a win by 2. And then the CDC Congressional, we close out the summer series. It's our Labor Day weekend, Friday, September 1st. We'll be in the Washington, D.C. area at WADA. That's actually the hotel itself is in Virginia. And that is our UK Open style redraw event. So every one of these has a little twist on it, and it's designed to kind of be fun and then give also players that might not normally get our true CDC experience a taste of what CDC is and can be.
Well, Peter, thank you so much. I hope the cross-border challenge this weekend goes well, and I'm sure we'll have you on sometime again soon.
Yeah, no, sincerely appreciate it. Always great to chat with you guys. And remember, any of those things we talked about, if you're interested in learning more, folks, www.champdarts.com, www.champdarts.com. Information on all the stuff we talked about today. And we hope to see you all at an event this week or this year, excuse me. And Burton, thank you so much for having me. Truly appreciate it.
Thanks again to Peter for joining us. We come to the end of the show, and it is our time for the Premier League picks. And just before we get to them, we will touch on last week. And Burton, what a effort from you, going 4 out of 4, getting correct on all of them. Me, 1 out of 4, 3 wrong, 1 right. And we'll move on. Night 12, Rotterdam ahoy. In the words of Gary Anderson, we are getting there now. There is only 5 nights of the regular season to go. First game up, Chris Dobie against Johnny Clayton. How do you see this first one going?
I think if last week is be believed, it goes whichever way I'm going to say. But you got to feel for Chris Dobie, because he cannot catch a break. He's lost quarterfinals 3 consecutive times, 99 average, 106 average, and then 103 average. And in fact, the only one where he got even to halfway to winning was the one that he averaged only 99 in that match against Nathan Aspinall a couple weeks ago. He's doing so well and not getting any reward for it. And that's why right now he is 7 points adrift. Johnny Clayton doing fairly well himself, but getting reward. He won those consecutive nights. And okay, he went out first match last time, but that's just going to make him hungry this time. I feel for Chris Dobie. He deserves more than he's gotten out of this Premier League. But I think Johnny Clayton's going to just continue piling that misery on Dobie. I'm going to go 6 legs to 3. Hey, at least he gets halfway this time.
Well, we are going to go different again this week, which is a bit concerning for me after last week's effort. And I think I said before, Chris Dobie's Premier League campaign, it does feel a little bit like Mensa Suljovic, because he kept averaging 100 plus or in the high 90s and losing. And as you touched on there, it was the same last week, 103 average. What does his opponent do? Gerwyn Price throws a 115 average at him, the best that he's had in the Premier League, I think. So pretty tough, isn't it, the Premier League? But I did back Chris Dobie last week for the upset. Wasn't expecting Gerwyn Price to play to that level, and going up against Johnny Clayton here, who's dropped a spot from 3rd to 4th after last week, and he's going to be bang up for it, isn't he? Because he lost first game last week, needs to get those points to keep himself in the top 4. But I'm going to go for Chris Dobie. I think you can't keep playing well and not getting the results. I'm going to go different to you. I'm going to go with Chris Dobie to turn it around this week, and who knows, maybe if he goes all the way, wins the title, he could do what Johnny Clayton does and in a few weeks be back in that top 4. So I'm going to go 6-4 to Chris Dobie.
All right, well, you're already 0 for 1. Second game with Michael Smith against Gerwyn Price. 3rd place against 2nd. How do you see this one?
Yeah, this is an interesting tie, and we spoke about Gerwyn Price's recent record against Michael van Gerwen, and he's won the last 5 games against him, and it seems like it's been pretty similar against Michael Smith. He's beaten him more regularly, and that's going against the world number 3 and the world number 1 having good records. And like I have to say, I watched the Peter Wright Michael Smith game last week, and what a finish that was from Michael Smith. The 160 to force the decider, and then the 134 off the 170 to leave 36 and come back and win the decider. It was, considering I didn't go back and look at that, and I remembered that almost a week later, it's stuck in the mind. It was class. So yeah, I think Smith is he's coming back to some form, but I know he's been away on holiday. I thought it was Great Yarmouth to begin with, but I'm informed it was a bit sunnier than Great Yarmouth. So I hope he had a nice trip away. He's got a tough game to come back here, going up against Gerwyn Price, and I think Price is going to win this one. I'm going to go for it to be close again. Another 6-4. I'm going to go 6-4 to the Iceman.
I think you got one right this time. I think I've said everything I need to. I think Gezi is just playing too well. Michael Smith is figuring out how to be world number 1. I said that a month ago, and he obviously started to show that by winning the Euro Tour, what will be almost 2 weeks or a week and a half ago by the time they take the stage. But figuring out how to play as world number one is different than being the best player in the world at this moment. Gerwyn Price is. Even his off matches are tough to beat. I think Michael Smith will play well, but I think Gezi will do what he's been doing for the last month, and that will be a little bit too much for Michael Smith. You went 6-4. I'll go 6-3. I'll give you a chance to get a correct score here, but I'll go one leg better to the Iceman.
Happy days. Well, I've got one more right than I did last week, and we've still got 2 more games to go. Dimitri van den Bergh against Peter Wright. How do you see this one going?
Yeah, it's battle at the bottom of the table. Dimitri just hasn't found his footing in this Premier League. Peter Wright found it a little too late now. I think Peter Wright is getting it right now, and he is getting his season in gear. And I don't think there's hope for him in the Premier League. I think that, I mean, yes, he could go and win the next 3 nights, but that's pretty much what he has to do. And I don't think the way everyone around him is playing, that is a realistic enough chance. I think his Premier League campaign has sailed. I think Dimitri van den Bergh's Premier League campaign has sailed. Now, though, the goal is to get ready for the rest of the year, and Peter Wright is going to see this opportunity against his friend, who's also struggling a bit right now, as a chance to catch up to 7th and put those eyes on catching Chris Dobey for 6th. That is Peter Wright's goal right now, is just climb the table, get that little bit more money, get some results, and then when the season really matters in the World Match Play and the other events, win. And I think Peter Wright is putting himself in that position now. So I'm going to go for the man who's out of nowhere going to probably come in with that little bit more confidence to get even more confidence. 6 legs to 4 to Snakebite.
Oh, I was going similar there. I'm going to change my pick a little bit though. And yeah, this is a game that I always seem to enjoy. And this is going back to the Premier League 2 years ago. A lot of it was behind closed doors. So we do try and forget about that era of darts. But these two had some enjoyable games that year. And as you say, this is the battle of the bottom 2. It's when we're recording this, we've got my team Colchester against Crawley, so we'll call it the Colchester v Crawley of the Premier League this week. 2 teams scrapping at the bottom. They're not going to get relegated, but they do want to get the points. And yeah, we have seen the last few weeks Peter Wright start to find some form in the Premier League, and a little bit unfortunate not to get over the line against Michael Smith last week. I think if that game was played 6 months ago, he would have won that game, but we know that Michael Smith is a different animal, and as we've spoken about, he can find ways to win games now when he's not playing at his best and when he's not near his C or B game, and against players that maybe are lacking a bit of confidence like Peter Wright is at the moment. But like you, I think he is going to get the win here. I've not been tipping Peter Wright much this year, and that's been proven right because he has been losing, but he's starting to find some form, and I think this one is going to go to a last leg. I'm going to go Peter Wright to get the edge here. I'm going to go 6-5 to Snakebite.
And then last match, Michael van Gerwen, who, as we mentioned, is top of the table, but only by 2 points now. Still 11 points clear of 3rd and 14 points clear of 5th. Who's in 5th? Well, that's his opponent, Nathan Aspinall, who, after being in the top 4 all season, dropped out the last 2 weeks with his first back-to-back quarterfinal defeats. How do you see this one?
Yeah, I think in terms of the table, this is possibly the biggest quarterfinal of the lot. And I know there's that big gap between these two players, 14 points and 4 places. But as you say, Nathan Aspinall, he's been in that top 4 all season. He dropped out of it last week, and we spoke about him last week as well after he got to that final on the Euro Tour, his ability to keep picking up quarter-final wins in the Premier League. It was 7 out of 9 weeks he did it. He's now lost back-to-back quarter-finals, and that's the first time that he's done that all season. So he is going to be desperate to get the points, and Michael van Gerwen, not the man you want to play, especially with that short lead that he's now got at the top of the table, 2 points. And if our picks are right, Gerwyn Price gets a win earlier in the night, then they are going to be level and only separated by goal differential. So I think Michael van Gerwen is going to take this one. I'm going to go 6-3 to the Green Man.
They're all tough, aren't they? I say that all the time because they all are. I just And maybe I just need to make sure that my tip that Gezzy's going to catch MVG comes true. And the easiest way for that to happen is for it to happen on night 12 itself. Although, granted, if Gerwyn Price wins his quarterfinal, he will, at least for an hour or so, be up into number one because he's won more nights. But I'm actually going to go Nathan Aspinall to pull the upset so that if Gerwyn Price wins his match, he'll end the night in first, regardless how the rest of the match goes. Aspinall, it's really looking like it's going to be a 5-way race for 4 spots. That could very quickly not materialize if Aspinall keeps losing. And it really depends which Aspinall shows up. But I think he's going to, now that he's outside the top 4, he's going to come in motivated and he's going to get those points to stay with the big boys that he's chasing. And I think he's going to pull the upset over what will be it by the time they play the former table leader, but certainly one of the favorites in MVG, Aspinall to win it 6-5. Anything else for this week?
Well, before I get into that, I need to stop forgetting that there is different rules for this Premier League now, and it is the second tiebreak is the Knights one. Maybe we should call that the away goals rule or something. We can't call it Knights one, but just want to say thanks to our guests for joining us, to Jeffrey and Peter for joining us. Thank you to our sponsors as well, to Dartwolf. If you want more Dynamite Darts content, head on over to dartwolf.tv. Give Dartwolf a follow on Twitter as well, at Dartwolf180. If you want a free case of beers, go to beer52.com/darts. Just cover the postage. And to our listeners, thanks very much for listening. The road to 400 has begun. We'll be back next week for episode 302. I'm now going to go and watch that clip of Peter Wright taking out 302 in 6 darts, probably about 302 times actually. So that's how I'm going to be enjoying the darts over this week. But if you're going to join me in doing that, or if you're going to watch your darts elsewhere, all you got to do is make sure you enjoy the darts.
And if you are in a position where you just can't watch the darts this week, just hang tight, because there'll be darts to enjoy pretty much every week for the rest of the year. Not to mention, maybe you should enjoy some darts over in North America this weekend, as our guest, Peter Citera, told you to do. But yeah, we'll be back next week. The great 302 episode next week. Hopefully we'll have Peter Wright on to talk about his 302 and 6 darts. I don't know. It's in the works. We'll see. But if not, we'll have some great other people on. And even if we do, we'll have some great other people on as well. You'll just have to hang tight and find out who that is. Thanks to everyone who joined this week. Thanks to everyone who's going to join next week. And thanks to all of you for listening. We'll see you next week.